The world is watching Iran with bated breath. Every move, every statement, every subtle shift in policy is scrutinized under an international microscope. The weight of global expectations rests heavily on this ancient land, a land steeped in history and now facing a pivotal moment. Today, June 22, 2025, a date etched in the minds of policymakers and citizens alike. The decisions made on this day could reverberate for years to come, shaping the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East and beyond. The Middle East stands on a knife's edge, a region already scarred by decades of conflict and instability. The delicate balance of power is threatened, and the slightest tremor could send it spiraling into chaos. The air is thick with tension. A palpable sense of unease hangs over diplomatic corridors and capital cities. Negotiations are fraught with difficulty, trust is in short supply, and the stakes have never been higher. A single misstep, a misinterpreted signal or a rash decision could ignite a regional firestorm, plunging the area into a devastating conflict with far-reaching consequences. The world holds its breath, hoping for restraint and wisdom. At the heart of this crisis, the central point of contention, the issue that dominates headlines and fuels international anxiety, Iran's nuclear program. A complex and controversial undertaking that has become a focal point of global concern. Is it for peace, as Tehran claims, a source of energy and technological advancement for a nation seeking to modernize and prosper, or a weapon, as its rivals fear? A clandestine effort to develop the ultimate deterrent, a threat to regional stability and global security. This question keeps diplomats awake, fueling countless hours of negotiations and debates as they struggle to find a peaceful resolution. And markets on edge, sending shockwaves through the global economy as investors brace for potential disruptions in oil supplies and trade routes. The stakes are global, impacting nations far beyond the immediate region, not just regional. The consequences of escalation would be felt worldwide. In power corridors from Washington to Tehran and in capitals across the globe, leaders weigh peace, exploring every possible avenue for de-escalation and dialogue, against the risk of catastrophic conflict. A conflict that could engulf the region and draw in major world powers. For Iranians, this is daily reality. The uncertainty, the anxiety, the constant awareness of living in a nation at the center of global tensions. Sanctions, crippling economic measures that have taken a heavy toll on the Iranian people. Isolation, a sense of being cut off from the international community, a pariah state in the eyes of many, and a fierce pride in sovereignty. A deep-seated determination to defend their nation's independence and resist external pressure. The world's pressure is seen not as a legitimate concern, as an affront to dignity, a challenge to their national honor and a violation of their right to self-determination, making compromise difficult. The path to a peaceful resolution is fraught with obstacles and requires a willingness to bridge deep divides. It's a tightrope walk, a delicate balancing act between competing priorities and conflicting interests, between survival and honor. A choice that will define the future of Iran and its place in the world. The choices made now, in these critical hours and days, will ripple across the globe, impacting economies, alliances, and the very fabric of international relations. The answer is tangled in decades of mistrust, a complex web of historical grievances, political rivalries and broken promises, and competing interests. A geopolitical chess game with the highest stakes imaginable. To understand what comes next, to decipher the future trajectory of this crisis, we must first understand how we got here. We must delve into the past, examine the key events and decisions that have shaped the present. The future of the Middle East, a region of immense strategic importance and cultural richness, hangs in the balance, dependent on the choices made in the coming days. The world watches, waits, and hopes for a peaceful resolution. To understand the complexities of today's crisis in the Middle East, a crisis steeped in decades of mistrust and geopolitical maneuvering, we must look back to the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, more commonly known as the JCPOA. This agreement, once hailed as a landmark achievement in international diplomacy, now casts a long shadow over all attempts at de-escalation. Signed with great fanfare in 2015 by Iran and the P5+1 nations, the United States, United Kingdom, France, China, Russia, and Germany. It was meant to end the decade-long nuclear standoff, a standoff that threatened to plunge the region into further instability and potentially trigger a nuclear arms race. In exchange for the lifting of crippling economic sanctions, Iran accepted strict limits on its nuclear program, and in return, The world powers agreed to lift those sanctions, paving the way for renewed trade and economic integration. For a brief moment, hope flickered across the Middle East and beyond, a hope that diplomacy could prevail and that a more peaceful future was within reach. But in 2018, the United States, under a new administration, unilaterally withdrew from the JCPOA, reimposing harsh economic sanctions on Iran, sanctions that had a devastating impact on the Iranian economy. For many Iranians, who had hoped for a better future after years of economic hardship, this sudden reversal and the reimposition of sanctions was seen as a profound betrayal of trust and a violation of the agreement. They had in good faith opened their nuclear facilities to international inspectors, allowing unprecedented access and transparency, dismantled key parts of their nuclear infrastructure, including centrifuges used for uranium enrichment, only to be punished with even more crippling economic pressure. The collapse of the deal, once seen as a beacon of hope, fueled the warnings of hardliners within Iran's political establishment, those who had always been skeptical of engagement with the West. They argued that the West could not be trusted to uphold its commitments. The ghost of the JCPOA, a symbol of broken promises and failed diplomacy, now haunts every negotiation aimed at reviving the agreement or forging a new path forward. Within Iran, compromise is now often seen as a sign of weakness, a dangerous concession to an unreliable partner, and trust in Western assurances is viewed with deep suspicion, even outright naivete. Any new talks begin not with optimism and goodwill, but with deep-seated suspicion and a profound sense of resentment on the part of the Iranian delegation. Iranian negotiators are under immense pressure from hardliners at home to avoid repeating the perceived mistakes of the JCPOA. They demand ironclad guarantees that any new agreement will be honored, and that sanctions relief will be permanent and irreversible. Something Western powers, wary of future political shifts and domestic opposition, are rarely willing to offer. The past, in this case, is not just a matter of historical record or academic debate, it's a living, breathing obstacle that actively hinders progress towards a more stable and peaceful future. Every step forward in negotiations is shadowed, every concession carefully weighed, by the haunting memory of what went wrong with the JCPOA and the deep-seated mistrust it engendered. Sanctions cast a long shadow, shaping the very fabric of daily life. They permeate every corner of society, influencing decisions both big and small, from the availability of essential goods to the aspirations of the younger generation. The weight of these economic restrictions is palpable, felt by every Iranian citizen as they navigate their daily routines. In Iran, the impact is widespread, affecting not just the economy but also the social and political landscape of the nation. Hospitals struggle to secure even the most basic medicine. Essential treatments become difficult to access, and the health of the population is put at risk. The shortages are a stark reminder of the human cost of economic sanctions. Factories close their doors one by one for lack of essential parts and raw materials. Production grinds to a halt, leaving workers unemployed and further weakening the economy. The industrial sector, once a source of national pride, now struggles to survive. Inflation soars to dizzying heights, eroding the value of savings and making it increasingly difficult for ordinary Iranians to afford basic necessities. The purchasing power of the rial plummets, leaving families struggling to make ends meet. And hope dims for the young, as opportunities for education and employment dwindle. The future seems uncertain, and many young Iranians contemplate leaving the country in search of a better life. The strategy, make life so hard, imposing immense pressure on the Iranian people in the hope of achieving political change, that people demand change. The architects of these policies believe that economic hardship will eventually lead to widespread discontent and ultimately force the government to alter its course. But often sanctions unify, fostering a sense of shared adversity and national solidarity, rather than divide. Instead of turning against their government, many Iranians rally around it, viewing the sanctions as an external threat to their sovereignty and independence. Many Iranians see them as economic warfare, a deliberate attempt to cripple their economy and undermine their way of life, not just policy. They perceive it as a hostile act, akin to a military assault, but waged through financial and economic means. National pride and memories of resisting foreign intervention run deep. These historical narratives shape their understanding of the present and fuel their determination to resist external pressure. The government frames itself as a defender against foreign bullies, portraying the sanctions as an act of aggression that threatens Iran's sovereignty and independence. Enduring hardship is seen as preferable to national humiliation. Many Iranians believe that surrendering to external pressure would be a betrayal of their history and values. Sanctions inflict pain, but also harden resolve, strengthening the determination of many Iranians to resist external pressure and defend their nation's interests. The world sees sanctions as leverage, a tool to exert pressure and force concessions. Many Iranians see them as war, a silent economic war waged against their nation. The result, a more defiant Iran, a nation that feels it has been pushed to the brink, feeling it has little left to lose. This sense of desperation can lead to unpredictable and potentially dangerous actions. Escalation becomes more likely when a nation feels cornered. The stakes are high, and the potential for miscalculation is ever present. Inside Iran, hardliners grow louder. They dominate the military, government, and clerical ranks. The JCPOA's failure to them proved negotiation is a trap. Their message, only strength guarantees security. They push for nuclear capability as a deterrent, not aggression. Pointing to North Korea, they argue only a nuclear threshold ensures safety. They see Israel's arsenal and demand equal footing. Years of sanctions and betrayals make resistance appealing. Hawks promise strength and respect through defiance. Economic pain is dismissed as the price of independence. Moderates who seek global integration are sidelined. Even a diplomatic breakthrough would face fierce internal opposition. The world negotiates not with one Iran but with a divided, conflicted nation. While diplomats talk, a shadow war rages. Sabotage, assassinations, and cyber attacks target Iran's nuclear program. Scientists are killed, centrifuges destroyed, viruses unleashed. Iran retaliates with its own covert operations and cyber warfare. Proxy groups and asymmetric tactics keep tensions high. Every technical failure is suspected sabotage, every incident an enemy plot. Trust is nearly impossible in this climate. A single miscalculation could turn covert war into open conflict. The shadow war is the dangerous backdrop to the nuclear standoff. If diplomacy fails, the conflict won't stay in Iran. The Middle East would be pulled into chaos. Saudi Arabia and the UAE fear a nuclear Iran and may pursue their own weapons. A regional arms race could follow. Iran's missiles and proxy forces could open multiple war fronts. Civilian populations would suffer across borders. The Strait of Hormuz, vital for global oil, could be closed. Oil prices would skyrocket, triggering global recession. The world economy would feel the shockwaves instantly. This is about more than Iran's nuclear program. It's about global stability. The non-proliferation regime itself is at risk. The dominoes are lined up. One push could topple them all. Despite the gloom, diplomacy isn't dead. Quiet talks are underway in neutral venues. The goal: de-escalate, find common ground, and avoid war. The new approach is less for less. Modest steps, limited relief. Iran might halt high-level enrichment. The West could unfreeze some assets. Economic pain and fear of war drive both sides back to the table. China's growing influence adds new dynamics, but mistrust and spoilers remain. Still, the fact that talks continue is a rare glimmer of hope. The greatest obstacle is a lack of trust, built over decades. Iran remembers coups, wars, and broken deals. The West remembers hostage crises and threats. Each side sees the other's actions in the worst light. Building trust requires more than deals. It needs a shift in mindset. Verification, not just trust, must be the foundation. Any future agreement will need even stronger inspections and guarantees. Both sides must believe the other will keep its word. Without this, any bridge will be too fragile to last. We stand at a crossroads. One path leads to escalation, war, chaos, and suffering. The other is diplomacy. Difficult, imperfect, but hopeful. For Iran, it means limits and transparency. For the West, sanctions, relief, and security assurances. The choice will be made by leaders, but shaped by their people. Fragile diplomatic efforts show the desire to avoid catastrophe is alive. The world must decide, risk war or risk peace. The question is not just for politicians, but for all of us. Can decades of animosity be overcome? The answer may define the century.